It is 2 nights before Christmas, and the town rests beneath a cover of snow. The lamps along Main Street cast their circles of light onto the drifts, glowing halos swallowed quickly by the falling flakes. A Christmas tree stands proud in the square, its bulbs still lit, their colours muted behind the storm. Garlands droop from eaves, wreaths hang heavy on doors. If you looked from a distance, you might think all was calm, all was bright. But here, closer, the season feels thinner. The laughter from the tavern is soft, distant, muffled. The diner still holds a few souls inside, lingering over their coffee, but their voices fall short, carrying no further than the walls that contain them. The town is alive, yes, still breathing, still lit, but the breath is shallow, the light faint, as if the holiday cheer is stretched over something colder, something deeper, something unseen. I sit alone in my office at the end of Main Street, watching the snow press against the window pane. The stove ticks in the corner, a dull warmth spreading across the room. The lantern on my desk burns steady, throwing shadows long across the boards. In front of me lie my notes, names, dates, places. A farmhand from the North Fields, a clerk who locked up one evening and never opened again, a widow who lived alone, her house now dark. One by one, not enough to empty the town, not enough to stop its life, but enough to be noticed, enough to weigh, enough to draw whispers through every doorway and hush across every table. I've written and rewritten these names, tracing them with my pencil until the paper has grown soft, thin in places. I turn them over, shuffle them, place them again, as if they might arrange themselves into an answer, but no pattern comes. Only the same faces missing, only the same silence where they once belonged. The clock above the door ticks on, patient and untroubled. Each sound a small tap, a reminder that time passes whether I find answers or not. The stove hums in reply, and together they form a rhythm I cannot fight. I mean to stay awake. I mean to guard this place, this night, this town. But the warmth grows heavier, the quiet grows deeper. The snow outside softens the world until its edges blur. My eyes fall, close, and I drift. At first, I think I have not drifted at all. The room is the same, the stove still ticking, the lantern still burning, the notes still scattered across the desk, the clock still keeping time. But the window is wrong. There is no snow now, no street, no lamplight through the glass. There is only black, not darkness as I know it, not the simple absence of light, but a thick, suffocating black, as though the glass has turned to tar and the world beyond has been erased. The door opens without sound, and there he stands, a man, still as stone. Coat collar turned high, hat brim low, face pale, colourless in the lantern glow. I do not know him, and yet something about him feels remembered, half seen in another place, another time. He does not step inside. He does not need to. The room feels smaller simply for his presence. When he speaks, his voice is low, hollow, as though it has been spoken once before and buried deep in the ground, only to rise again. I know where the people are. The words press against the air, heavy, deliberate. I try to speak, but my tongue is leaden, my lips unmoved. The dream holds me, and I cannot break it, but he seems to hear me anyway, seems to know the question forming in my silence. His hand rises, slow, measured, not toward the window, not toward the map on the wall, downward, toward the floor, toward the boards beneath my desk, the ground beneath the office itself. They gather, he whispers, where no carols are sung. The room folds. The walls bend inward. The lantern gives a faint chime, glass ringing like a fingertip tapped upon it. The stove hum fades. The clock halts mid-tick. The door closes without a hand to close it, and I wake. The stove ticks again. The clock resumes its patient time. Snow brushes at the window, soft and steady. I push back the brim of my hat, where it has fallen low across my eyes. The dream clings to me, sharp and cold, every word of it etched into my mind. I know where the people are. They gather where no carols are sung. I whisper the words aloud, as if to prove them smaller in the waking world. But they are not smaller. They carry the same weight, the same chill. And then the memory strikes me. That face, that pale man. I have seen him before. Not here, not in this office, but once, not long ago, at the edge of town. He stood alone by the roadside as I rode past on my morning rounds, still, watching, unmoving. I turned once, twice, and by the third time he was gone. I told myself then it was nothing. A traveller pausing, a drifter come to rest. But now I know better. Now I know he was waiting, waiting for me. The stove's warmth lingered on my sleeves as I rose, but it didn't follow me to the door. Cold slipped under the threshold like a careful animal. I buttoned my coat to the throat, lifted the lantern from its hook, and coaxed the wick until the flame steadied. Small, obedient, a circle I could carry in my hand. Outside, Main Street breathed. Not deeply, but enough. The tree in the square hummed with colour. The bulb softened behind the falling snow. A pair of children crossed the far end of the street, mittened and muffled, trailing a sled by its rope. Their laughter rode the air briefly, then vanished as their door closed behind them. From the tavern came a ribbon of fiddle. The bow dragged slow over strings. One tune, then another. Someone clapped once, an uncertain sound, and stopped, as though embarrassed by the echo. I stepped down from the office stoop. The lantern drew a circle at my boots. The snow pressed up around it, bright at the edge, dark toward the middle. My breaths rose and dissolved. Boot to snow. Silence. Boot to snow. Silence. I passed the barber's, its striped pole asleep beneath a white sleeve. The tailor's window showed a black suit on a headless form. A length of ribbon draped like a second thought over its shoulder. Paper snowflakes, children's work, were taped crookedly inside the glass, corners curling where the paste had given up against the cold. At the church, I stopped, hand on the rail, lantern held low. The signboard promised carols tomorrow night, times chalked neat in a careful hand. Candles would be lit, voices would rise, the town would crowd the steps and spill quietly into the road. That was what the season knew how to do. But tonight, the doors were shut, and the bell rope slept its length against the wall. The air around the eaves made a wooden sound, not a creak, not a groan, only the suggestion of boards remembering heat. I did not try the handle. I did not peer through the glass. Some places tell you more by being closed. The diner held its glow like a held breath. Through the window, I saw the cook polishing the urn lid with a cloth already clean. An old instinct, a motion performed to keep the hands from being idle. One man at the end stool wrapped his scarf twice, then a third time, as if the extra loop might carry him farther through the night. He slid a coin across the counter, nodded, and left. The bell above the door rang once and decided not to ring again. The cook watched the door a second longer than he needed to, then returned to the urn with his cloth. I tapped my fingers against the lantern's handle to warm them and moved on. The general store had drawn its shades, not quite to the sill. A slip of candlelight leaked through and laid a thin gold line across the snow where the door met the step. Upstairs, a single window showed a figure crossing once, then once more, then nothing. Paper bells hung stiff, their folded mouths waiting for a draught. There were still lives here, small, contained, gentle, each of them tending its own circle of light. But there were also names on my desk, and the distance between those two truths felt like a road I was already walking. I turned north. The last of Main Street unwound behind me. Beyond the livery, the lamps thinned. Houses stood with their wreaths bowed, their windows yellowed and modest. A woman leaned out to shake a rug. She saw me, lifted a hand, and was gone. Somewhere, a piano tested 3 careful notes, then 2, and stopped. The snow worked at my boots until the leather learned the shape of the drifts. My lantern learned the rhythm of my stride. Boot to snow, silence. Boot to snow, silence. I kept to the road as long as the road kept to me. Its shoulders softened into the fields, its ditches filled politely to the brim. Fences bowed, wire drawn tight with frost. Posts wore white caps, neat as churchmen. A mailbox leaned, its door half open like a small mouth caught mid-word. I closed it gently as I passed and felt the latch accept the night. Behind me, the town gathered itself into fewer lights, then fewer still. A cluster, a scatter, a suggestion. Not gone, only smaller. Not silent, only farther away. I listened for my own mind and heard the dream instead. I know where the people are. They gather where no carols are sung. The words did not urge. They arranged. They laid themselves along the road like measurements. They were not a command. They were a direction, the way a river chooses a valley. I thought of the pale man's face, a colourless thing made of dawn. I thought of seeing him days ago at the edge of town, a stillness that did not ask to be named. Perhaps he had been at the roadside more than once, and I had learned to look away before my eyes knew they were doing it. The last house stood back from the road, porch light left on for someone who would not arrive. Under it, a pair of boots waited side by side, like dogs told to stay. I lifted my lantern in greeting. The light did not carry that far. Light rarely does. It remains with the hand that holds it. Past the house, the road grew unsure of itself. The wind took up a new voice between stands of bare trees, low and even, as if trying a song and finding it did not suit. I drew my collar higher. The lantern flame tightened, then eased, learning the new current. Boot to snow, silence. Count to 10, start again. At a gate the hinges spoke a quiet metal sound. The gate moved the width of a thought and settled. I let my free hand rest on the top rail and felt the cold teach me its lesson. Everything is still until it isn't. Everything moves until it stops. Beyond the gate, the land opened. A white plain with the idea of fences beneath it. Lines buried but not erased. Trees stood like dark stitches against the horizon, keeping the field from coming undone. The sky lowered nearer than it had been in town. Snowflakes arrived larger now, loitering as they fell, each one deciding where it preferred to land. I breathed through wool, tasted iron, heard the small hiss my lantern made when a flake chose the chimney and passed away as steam. I kept north. Once, I thought I heard the long hinge cry of a barn door somewhere beyond the field, but when I stopped to listen, it was only the wind explaining itself around a stand of pines. Once, I saw a lantern far off, another traveller moving a circle through the dark. I raised mine in answer, and they raised theirs, and then both of us turned our lights back to the ground we had to carry. The road narrowed, seemed to consider ending, then remembered itself and went on. My steps did the same. I came to the fork, left to the river bend, right to the old coal road, and stood a while with the decision as if it belonged to me. It didn't. It had been made in the dream already. Right. The cut through the low hill sheltered the track from the worst of the wind, but kept the cold. Snow had drifted in long, shallow waves that held their shape even as my boots entered them. The trees leaned together above me, their branches laced with a white so fine it looked woven and not fallen. I set my palm briefly to the bank, felt the frozen dirt through the crust, and let my breath even out. The lantern circle travelled forward, then back, then forward again, with the swing of my arm. The shadows kept pace, always a little ahead, always a little behind. Now and then the road showed its old bones through the snow, a rut that remembered wheels, a stone that had refused to be buried, a patch of gravel stitched thinly to the surface like an old scar. I counted again, not to arrive anywhere, but to keep company with the numbers. 12, 13, 14. The flame took a small breath. I trimmed the wick with a fingernail, and it thanked me by returning to its work. The last fence ended at a stand of saplings the mine's men had planted and then abandoned. They had grown, but not quite grown up. A half-made thought of a forest, kept from finishing by the wind. Past them, the land sank. I knew this place without looking. A knowledge gathered from maps and memories, from warnings passed like recipes across tables. The mine was ahead. Under the hill the children were told not to climb after thaw. Even in summer, the mouth kept a chill that tasted of bad dreams and old iron. Even in summer, the wind avoided it. Now in winter, it would be patient. Now in winter, it would be awake. I stopped before the last bend and took stock of what I carried. A lantern with a willing flame, a coat with one good button more than I expected, a name that meant I could knock on any door in town and be let in. None of those things could be kept where I was going. They would have to wait for me here, on the side of the road, like the boots under the porch light. The wind moved low along the cut and quieted again. Somewhere behind me, the town measured out its night with the same patience it brought today. A fiddle found its way back to a tune. A kettle decided to sing. A child turned in sleep and took the blanket with them, and a mother woke enough to set it right. I lifted the lantern and went on. The earth rose a little, then bowed, an old courtesy, and the black mouth of the mine revealed itself between the timbers, snow packed neat against their feet. The sign above was mostly the memory of a sign, a board, 2 chains, a shape where letters had once been held by paint. I stood a moment to let the circle of my light explore the frame. White had entered where it could, pressing into the corners, making small pillows of itself on every ledge. Beyond that, only dark. I listened, not for voices, for their absence. The mine offered it freely, a deeper quiet than the fields, older than the town, untroubled by the season. Boot to earth. The sound went out and returned smaller. I took another step, and the sound returned smaller still. By the third, there was only my breathing and the little hiss of the flame. Behind me, the road held my prints the way a book keeps a page for a reader who promises to come back. I didn't make that promise. Some stories prefer not to be read twice. I lowered the lantern, and the dark agreed to move aside the width of its light. And I entered. The mine mouth waited like an open throat. Snow had gathered in the corners, packed into small white pillows where the timbers met the ground. The sign above it was little more than wood and rusted chain, letters long gone. I stood still, lantern raised, watching the light push weakly against the frame. Beyond it, nothing. Not dark as night is dark, but a hollow black, deeper, more deliberate, a quiet that listened back. I stepped forward, boot to stone. The sound returned to me smaller. Another step, boot to gravel. The echo came thinner, swallowed before it could stretch. By the third step, the silence was the greater voice. Inside, the air pressed close, cool, damp, heavy with the taste of iron and earth. It belonged to the place before it belonged to me. The lantern's glow showed old scars in the walls, the marks of picks and drills, chalk lines faded, nails that no longer remembered what they had held. A rope hung stiff from a beam, its end hardened like bone. The drip came again, not hurried, not even steady, just patient, a sound that would outlive any voice. I moved carefully, and the shadows moved with me. They leaned, stretched, bent themselves against the stone as though eager to explore ahead. Sometimes they seemed to return slower than the lantern's swing, as if reluctant to follow me back. A cart lay on its side in a shallow recess, one wheel broken, the other locked in place by rust. Wooden slats had bowed, nails standing proud where the grain had given up. Beside it, a shovel with no handle, its edge dulled by years of waiting. I crouched, lantern low, and the flame painted the metal in dull gold. No boot prints there, only dust, damp, and the memory of men long gone. But farther on, I found them. Impressions. Boots pressed into earth softened by water, hardened again by frost. Not many, not clear, but enough to see a path bending ahead. I followed, step by step. Boot to earth, echo, boot to earth, echo. The flame swayed with my stride, and the walls leaned closer, as though listening. You shouldn't have come. The words were not behind me, not ahead. They were in the air, folded into the silence, shaped from it. I raised the lantern. Its flame did not waver. It only showed him, the pale man, hat brim low, collar high, skin drained of colour, eyes pale as things seen before dawn. He did not belong to the world above. He belonged to this place, as if the mine had drawn him out from its stone. I know where the people are, he said. Where? My voice came smaller than I had meant, caught and shortened by the air. He tilted his head, almost with pity. Gone, gone from their windows, gone from their tables. They walked when the night asked them to walk. They gathered where no carols are sung, and they wait still. The lantern's light reached his cheek, but found no warmth. His face was a surface without depth. Are they alive? I asked. They are as you will be, he said softly, walking, standing, waiting. In the silence he turned his gaze to the slope beyond us, a deeper tunnel, air rising from it like the breath of something ancient. I felt it brush my face, damp and cold, older than my own lungs. You can still go back, I said, but the words did not sound true. I have already gone back, he whispered. I have already come forward. I am the distance between those two things. The silence folded in again. He did not move closer. He did not move away. He was simply there. And I stepped past him, into the dark. Boot to earth. Boot to earth. The lantern followed. The tunnel bent and narrowed, then opened again like a throat releasing a long-held breath. The air grew heavier, denser, as if it had been kept sealed for years and resented being disturbed. Each breath I took fogged the air. then disappeared as though the mine itself was swallowing it. The lantern's glow pulled small shapes from the dark. Timbers bowed and cracked, nails flowering with rust, stains where water had carved its slow path down the walls. Everywhere I looked was the mark of time continuing without men to watch it. I pressed deeper, boot to earth, boot to stone, echo, silence. At one bend I found a glove. Its leather had stiffened and curled, the fingers frozen in a half-closed grasp. I turned it gently with the toe of my boot. Dust rose, then fell again in the same instant. Farther along lay a lantern frame, glass long gone, its base filled with the powder of years. Beside it, a bent nail and scraps of cloth that had lost their colour. A little beyond, half buried in the dirt, was a button, brass, dulled to green. I picked it up, rolled it in my palm, then set it back where I had found it. It had already chosen its resting place. The prints I had been following wavered here. They broke apart, scattered, thinned until I could no longer tell boot from stone. I lowered the lantern and swept its light across the floor, but the ground refused to give them back. As if those who had walked here had not turned aside, not stopped, not vanished, but simply folded into the mine itself. I stood a while, listening to the silence. It shifted around me like a tide that had forgotten the shore. The chamber opened wide, larger than the streets above. The lantern's flame caught fragments, a cart left overturned, tools abandoned, a beam leaning like an old man who could not stand straight. But none of these were what held me. It was the absence, a thick, waiting absence. Not people, not faces, only the shapes left behind, the hollows of them, as if the air still carried their outlines, like rooms kept warm after someone has left, like tables set with no one to sit. I tried to call out. The word left my mouth, but it didn't echo. It slipped away, dissolved before it could return. The pale man's whisper moved across the chamber without sound. You are close enough to understand the rest without telling. I turned. The tunnel behind me was only black. The way out was already too far to matter. I walked on. Another chamber. Empty. Only timbers groaning under their years. Only shadows pretending to be men who had long since gone. Another passage. Narrow, then wide. Each bend the same. Each corner holding silence like water in a cup. In one I found a pile of stones stacked neatly, as if hands had left them ready for tomorrow. But tomorrow had not come. In another, a coil of rope, stiff, no longer able to bend. It had been meant to pull, to carry, to hold, but now it was nothing but shape. Ah, my boots carried me steadily. I listened to their rhythm. Boot to earth, boot to earth, boot to earth. I listened to my breathing, the soft hiss of air, the fog it made. Each sound was smaller than the silence that held it. The lantern swayed, its glow pulling shadows long, returning them short. Sometimes it seemed as if the shadows were walking beside me, keeping their own slow pace, unwilling to let me go alone. I thought of the town, of the tavern where the fiddle dragged its bow across strings, of the diner's urn hissing as it met its boil, of the church waiting for carols that would not come, and I knew those sounds belonged to another world, a higher one, a world that had already forgotten me. Here in the mine, there was only one truth, the waiting. The tunnel bent again. It bent again after that. Always deeper, always downward. My flame stayed steady, but it grew smaller in my eyes, as if the dark was learning how to drink its light more quickly. My steps did not falter. They did not hurry. They only kept, one after another, boot to earth, boot to earth, boot to earth. The silence grew thicker, and with it, a certainty. I was not searching. I was not finding. I was joining. The mine did not hold the people. The mine had become them, and now it would become me. Another chamber opened, wide as a hall, but empty as the last. The air was colder, the drip slower, the shadows longer. There was nothing here to see, and yet it was full of what had been, full of what would be. I stood at the edge, raised the lantern higher, and for a moment thought I saw them. Not their faces, not their bodies, but the space they had left, the shape of them, standing still in rows, waiting in silence, eyes open to nothing. I blinked, and the chamber was bare. Only timbers, only stone, only air that pressed closer with each breath. I kept walking, not hurried, not afraid, only certain. Boot to earth, boot to earth. Deeper and deeper and deeper still. Above, snow was falling over the town. The tavern played its quiet tune. The diner's light glowed faintly in its window. A candle guttered and went out. And as the town slept beneath its cover of white, I was never seen again.